This is such a unique, fresh, wildly inventive movie, and that's what I'm most thankful for. It's not a movie that I've seen 1,000 times before. Is that what appealed to you about the source material when you read it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were so right on that it was definitely different and strange, and yet amazingly creative and inventive. There were so many, images and concepts just in the book, and dialogue lines and monologues for characters. I just loved it, and it just seemed to me like it could make something really different and fresh. And I'm so happy to hear somebody like yourself say that about it. It just makes my day.
Having not read the book,
yes.
I wanted to know if it was painful at all, what you had to drop from the book.
Well, I think I came up with a pretty simple solution as to how to adapt this 350-page novel into a 100-page screenplay. But I think that there's no question that some sections were lost, and good stuff, wonderful elements, which, maybe could be, fused into a sequel one day. But in any case, there was just no other way to do it. And yet, from the first reading, I could see that about the first third of it played just like a movie, and then had a pretty good ending. So I basically cut that section out, and then just went straight to the ending, and then had to make a few changes to make that work. But to me, it seemed pretty like a simple way to attack it, and it seemed to be okay. But the problem is that the writing was dense. There was monologues for some of these characters that were just magnificent that I actually shot, and some of them are in the movie and are great, like with the detective or with the Giamatti or with the Rastafarian. But then some of the other ones, I just for time lengths, I had to let go, and that was heartbreaking.
But one of the aspects of it that makes it so unique is that it so successfully blends the comedic with the horror elements, and it seems to me that those are two releases. I mean, similar kinds of releases that you're getting from an audience. Is that a tricky thing to balance those two elements?
Well, look, no question, because but there's like some inherent benefits and similarities to the two emotions, really, and I have been exploring that for many years with my other movies, because I learned right on that very early on, like with Phantasm, like if you were successful with a scary moment and you could get a response out of an audience, then they immediately go into a laugh afterwards. So there's some sort of connection there, because they're both releases in different ways.
Yeah.
But another challenge of making this movie was just tonally, because it's not easy to have a movie be funny in one moment and then scary in the next.
Yes, yeah. Well, and I'm wondering how you modulate that. First of all, in terms of performance, do you start it at a kind of a higher pitch and make it more subtle in subsequent takes, or how do you do that?
Well, I think you're onto something there, because it was something that I was doing throughout, which was bracketing performances. Because if I came to an area where this tone issue was giving me grief, what I would do is I would definitely try to get an over-the-top reading, a middle-of-the-road reading, and then a very underplayed reading of any of the acting lines, and which just provided ammunition so that I could go back to editing and then really try to fine-tune it and see how it was working with the other scenes that have been previously shot. A lot of it's it's not exactly rocket science, but it certainly takes some. It's one of those things where when something's working, you know it, and when it's not, you've got to find a solution for it.
Mm-hmm. And I guess it's just something that you feel. I mean, you feel when it's right, and you've hit it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And you're working in this movie, speaking of performances, and there are great performances in the movie. With seasoned veterans and newbies, I mean newcomers to the screen, was that an interesting dynamic to see those the older and the newer generation play against each other?
Well, I think from my perspective, the word might be terrifying because, we cast Chase Williamson, who played Dave. He came right out of University of Southern California, a drama school, and he had been in nothing. He'd not been in a movie, he'd not been in a TV series, been in nothing. And the way the scheduling worked out, he had to step in and do 8 pages of dialogue with Paul Giamatti on the very first day of shooting. And for a director, I was just terrified that the movie was going to crash and burn that day. That Chase would seize up, that it wouldn't work. And yet, kid has ice water in his veins. He's just so focused. And at the same time, we've got maybe the greatest actor working on the planet in Paul, who happens to be a really decent, nice, funny guy, and he just took Chase under his wing, and I think those scenes in the Chinese restaurant are some of the best things in the movie. Best acting. It's just great.
Yeah, they're terrific scenes. Part of what amazes me too is how much you were able to accomplish on, I would imagine, a lower end budget.
Yeah, sure.
Because this is independent filmmaking, but what was the trickiest effect to pull off in the movie for you?
Well, there were certainly, there were a lot of effects that were just open question marks for so long. Would we be able to find a way to make them work? And, for a while, it was that ghost door. Like, how are we going to make that thing shimmery and with her hand and make that thing where she comes in and we see her phantom limb,
Yeah.
But we found we had a plan, and it was implemented, and it worked out just great. So much of it was trial and error. Like, how are we going to have the meat pieces assembled, into the monster? For a while we were thinking, well, we'll just take a bunch of photos of it and do a digital thing where we move them around digitally and then they show up. But that was, we did a test on that and it looked really bad. And so we went back and did it the old-fashioned way with rubber pieces of meat and a bunch of fishing line, and we just got out there and and spent 2 days puppeting pieces of meat flying around the floor of the basement, and it came out just great.
Yeah.
So it was really a function of we a lot of times we'd have an idea how we'd do it, and sometimes it would work just fine, and other times it just wouldn't work well at all, and we'd have to start over.
Well, I'm thinking about the independent film and how it's changed from when you started, how it's kind of redefined itself. And a big part of that is with what's been happening with your movie, where you're releasing it on demand a month before it plays on theater screens. Does that kind of extra opportunity there excite you to get it in front of an audience?
Well, I'll be honest, I've kind of approached the thing a bit skeptically and with trepidation. But I will tell you some interesting early response that I've already had is that it just, see, the only parallel I can really draw is back in the later 90s, I made a couple of Phantasm movies that had the dreaded curse of going direct to video. And back in those days, that was like as bad of a movie as you could have. If it went direct to video, it was probably a piece of junk, and you were cursed forever, Yeah. But when you go into this direct to video on demand, or like premium and ultra video on demand, there doesn't appear to be any baggage that comes with that. I'm so surprised how excited the fans were, and fans of the book, to be able to get the movie in an advanced window and get to see it, and it almost seemed to make it special, which was very cool, actually.
Yeah.
And then the fact that we're following up with a theatrical run, I think you're right. We're into a new age where the consumers of entertainment want the movie wherever they can get it, and in the fashion that's most convenient. And some want to see it immediately on their iPod, and other ones want to go see it in a nice big theater with a big sound system. So it's a
brave new world.
There you go.
Just one last question, then I'll let you go.
Don't worry.
We're crazy about film score on this show, and your composer for John Dies at the End is a frequent guest of ours, Brian Tyler, and I want to know about that collaboration between director and composer for you.
Well, listen, I had an absolutely magnificent experience working with Brian Tyler 9 years ago on Bubba Ho-Tep. I mean, his score for that movie is just magical, and from the get-go, and as the time passed, of course, Brian's career has skyrocketed. I think right now he's composing Iron Man 3, so he's in the big time, and I was just hoping against hope that he might find a window and be able to come on board and help us with John, but it really made no sense for him to, because he can make huge amounts of money from the studios. So he really took a hit for us. He saw an early version of the movie, and he got it, of course. And of course, his score is so wonderful in guiding us by the hand through it. Not only some very transcendental trip type music, but he also came up with some really cool guitar-based heroic themes for John and Dave, and it was just a lot of fun music, and for the Dr. Marconi, and he's just I think, and look, John Williams is going to retire one of these days, and I believe Brian is going to take on that mantle, because he's one of the greatest theme-driven composers there ever is. He can create memorable movie themes, but at the same time he can also do super edgy, weird. I love him, and he's a great guy too. I can't say it.
Well, we love you, and we've been excited about talking to you because we love your movies, and it was a big thrill. Thank you so much.
Hey, that is so nice of you to say, and thanks. I really appreciate the support. I mean, we need it, and certainly appreciate it.